Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Cody, aka Junes, and Money is not here with us for episode 26. I am sorry. This will be my first solo pod episode, so please, folks, bear with me. I will try to make this as quick and painless and informative for you as I can. Today, I will be talking about In a Violent Nature for episode 26. I felt this was one that had to be discussed in more length. I watched it last Thursday. I posted a TikTok and I saw all sorts of comments of people that hated it and people that loved it. So that kind of gives me a gauge of what to talk about here, some of the different insights that I can bring into the episode. But before we do anything else, I just want to give a shout out to anybody that's listened to us. Thank you. You're the reason we do this. Since we started this podcast back in October, we've had an absolute blast and we've talked about things we never thought we'd talk about, and we've made connections with people we never even knew about. So it's been really, really cool to experience that. We are on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We have a fully functional website. You can find all of our stuff on that website. It's literally our STS hub. Please go to it if you want any kind of episode update, you want to watch anything from the past. Everything is right there. We post article blogs at least 2 to 3 times a week. It consists of reviews, news, and editorials. So all of that stuff is there for you. I want to be in all the facets of this cinema world for you guys to give you as good of an experience as I can. So In a Violent Nature, it was fucking wild. I knew what to expect going in. I knew director Chris Nash was going to implement a completely fresh new style of storytelling. For the slasher genre, especially, we were going to see a completely different point of view, POV. We talk about POV frequently. I think on this podcast, we've mentioned it probably 3 to 5 times in the past 25 episodes that we've done. So POV shots are very important. How you utilize them is really going to make or break a film. However, with Chris Nash, his implementation of the third person point of view works. There's a lot of people that did not feel that way, but I think what it does is it builds up the tension perfectly between the kills. There was a lot of people that have said there was too much meandering. There wasn't enough action. It was boring. And I get that. I understand, but I do request that you use a little bit of patience when watching this film. Number one, if you don't like nature, if you don't care about the surroundings and the scenery of the woods that we are set at, which is in Ontario, Canada, you probably aren't going to enjoy this film. So I recommend just not going to it. If you see people put out a review talking about the reasons they liked it being the third person point of view and the nature shots, then don't fucking go to it. You're not going to like it. And that's just the way it is. And I think that's why you see such a disconnect right now between the critics and the audience in terms of the ratings. It's been really interesting to see, but the third person point of view, it works for me. I enjoy seeing that. Getting to be with the killer the entirety of the film is so fucking unique. And you feel an almost heightened level of dread as he's approaching the characters. Usually when you're following the characters, it's kind of quicker when we get to the kills. You know, the killer is upon us way faster, but there is this slow buildup with In a Violent Nature towards each of the kills that once we reach our destination, aka our victim, we are about to burst with tension. We know the gory, brutal kill is on its way, and we slowly keep kind of tensing up, curling up in the seat as we make our way to the victim. That to me was really, really special. Seeing that in theaters was really exceptional for an experience, and it's one that will stick with me. There were moments where I just kind of sat back in awe as I watched Johnny, the killer, kind of go from place to place, from victim to victim. It was really, really neat to see. I understand it, why you wouldn't like that. And that's fine. If you don't enjoy that, please don't go. I don't want to give you a movie that you're going to hate. So if you're not up for the nature shots, you're not up for the scenery and the surroundings, just don't go to it. That's all there is to it. Now, I will talk a little bit about the gist of the story. And this is where you really start to find correlations between this movie and Friday the 13th. Clearly, there was a lot of inspiration from that film and that franchise that went into Chris Nash's directorial style. We see that in multiple nods and Easter egg almost scenes towards Friday the 13th. So there's plenty of that, and it's really cool to see. The story's about a man who is basically resurrected out of the ground, and this is taken on by teenagers that are in the woods. They come across a fallen fire tower, and below this fire tower, I should say, there is a almost sort of steel water pipe sticking out of the ground, and on this water pipe is a golden locket that you put around your neck. And these kids unknowingly take this locket without knowing the repercussions that it could bring to them. So they take that locket, they leave, and then we just get a literally frozen shot, a static shot, looking at the leaves on the ground and where that pipe was at. We slowly start to see the ground kind of rumble a little bit, and this body starts to take shape. We see the arm come out, we see the upper torso coming out, and before we know it, we have a full-fleshed human being. Not really human, of course, but we have an entity that is in the physical form. We don't know what his intentions are. If you read the synopsis, you know that locket went missing. He's probably going to go searching for the people that took it. But if you didn't read that, you might not know where this is going to go exactly. The first scenes with Johnny and his kills take a little bit. I will say the initial point of him finding his way to the first victims did take a little while, but the scenery all the while is incredible. He makes his way to a house where some character who's not even involved with the main cast of our protagonists, our victims, I should say, he ends up getting killed by Johnny. And Johnny ends up in the house of this man after killing him, and he's looking at this locket. He thinks maybe the locket was the one that went missing, but it was not. The locket was just some random one that this guy had gotten from years past. So he continues his search for the locket, and he eventually finds the group of teenagers that took the locket. And this is one of my other favorite scenes I'm going to talk about here at the campfire. We have all of our protagonists sitting around the campfire, and they are discussing ghost stories. They're sharing stories around the campfire. One of the ones that gets brought up is by one of the characters about the legend of Johnny, who is our killer, our entity in this film. He talks about the fact that Johnny, when he was younger, was with his dad a lot on the job site, and his dad was a logger. Johnny would kind of run around and play with toys and be loud and rambunctious. Johnny was mentally handicapped as well. Johnny got on the nerves of all the workers at the logging company, to the point that they took him to this fire tower, and they basically tricked him to go up into the fire tower, and they knocked it down, and he died. I can't remember if they knocked it down or they burned it on fire, but either way, they killed Johnny. And that's a horrific way to go. He was a child at that time. So the development from child to a more grown adult is unanswered, I think. I don't know if that explanation was really put in there nicely, how he grew so quickly. I mean, it had been 50 to 60 years since then. So I don't know, maybe he's been growing like a normal human being under the ground all the while. But anyways, he died as a child. He comes back as a full-fledged adult. And they're telling that story around the campfire. And it's really neat the way they take this shot, because we have basically a 360-degree revolvement around the campfire. We keep just kind of seeing face to face of all of our characters, listening to the story, telling the story. It's one of the more unique takes I've seen in a film, and it was kind of special to look at. And the one thing I will complain about, and a lot of the people have said, is the lack of good victims. And that's something I'll agree with. I don't think we get enough from these victims. We don't hear enough about them, their backgrounds, their stories. I didn't feel the stakes were high for me caring about them. So if they died, they died. I don't care. I don't have any buy-in to this character. It won't matter one way or the other. But there's a few of these scenes that, I think are really cool, the way they did that shot. There was just a piece of awe that I had when I was watching those moments. And Johnny eventually makes his first kills with this group. The first one is on one of the guys super fucking gory. I mean, the build up to these kills, and this is the fucking epitome of the film, is the quality of the kills. The first one, we have a guy who's listening to his stereo, his earphones out in the woods. He's got to go piss or something like that. He's drinking a beer, and he's got these headphones in. And I don't remember if Johnny takes the headphones, and I think he had a tool of some sort, but he literally comes behind this tree, brings the tool around, takes it to the guy's neck, and goes. The dude's head slopes to the ground. And then after that, this is even crazier. We have Johnny take this victim, carrying a head in one hand and kind of gripping in his neck the rest of his body in his right hand, dragging it to I don't remember, it's the fire station of sorts or some kind of memorial building for firemen, because there's some fireman antiques. So there's a fireman's mask, there's some loggers, tools, stuff like that. So he drags this body back to that location. He dons his fireman mask, which is very iconic to look at. And then he grabs his logging tools and he goes out to continue the search for his locket. He still has not found it at this point. I believe we then work towards the lake the next day, and there is so much downtime. And realistically, you have to think about it. The killer is going to be walking aimlessly for hours. I mean, we're talking days go by while this guy's walking from place to place. So that's just the reality of it. And if you like that, you like that. If you don't, that's just the way it is. I'm sorry. But he makes his way to the lake, and this is where we get our first kind of callback to Friday the 13th with Jason. He's at the lake, and there's two gals swimming. They're jumping off the dock. And you just have that same kind of shot across the lake in the trees. The victims can't see the killer looking at them, but he's got eyes on. He knows where they're at. One of the gals jumps in the lake, and this couple, I should say, is kind of a lesbian couple. So they are kind of flirtatious. The one gal saying, you keep swimming. I'm going to go up to the cliff. If you want to come back, we'll have some fun. So she leaves. There's one gal left in the water, and Johnny, I mean, this was really cool to see, basically just gets in the water and he walks through this water. And what I love about the shot we have is it's of the gal swimming, or of the dock where the gal's swimming at. We never see Johnny all the while as he's kind of traversing across the lake towards this gal. And eventually she just sinks. It's short, it's brief. She calls for help, but that's all we really hear. And then her body floats to the top. She had died. Johnny had killed her. That was a really cool moment to see. And then we work towards the kill on the cliff. This one, this one's insane. This one is insane. I don't even know how to explain it. She's on this cliff and she's doing yoga. She's waiting for her lover to come back, and surprise, surprise, she gets a absolutely mangled Johnny. This dude, like I've said in my TikTok, is absolutely awful to look at. The man's face is battered and ripped up. His eyes look like he's fucking blind. It's the weirdest thing to look at. So when she sees this, of course, she's going to be terrified. She immediately tries turning to run off the cliff, and then she realizes, oh shit, there's a fucking cliff there. And she kind of stops on a dime, and before she can really turn around, she almost knows that death is imminent. And before she even turns around where she's standing at, the logger tool goes straight through the stomach. And she certainly felt that. There's surprise on her face. Blood starts kind of pouring out of the mouth. And what happens next is incredible. So this logger tool, it's got like two, hooks on each end, and it's connected by a chain. So he put that first tool through the stomach. He takes the second tool, puts it on her head, and then he literally takes the tool that had went in the stomach, and he literally pulls it towards himself so that her head slopes down and slowly goes through the body. Insane. I just didn't think it would go to that extent, but they did, and I was curling in my seat. Everybody at the theater felt the same way. We were all like, holy fuck, what did I just watch? So that kill is, bar none, I think, probably the best one. There's some other good ones, of course, but that one, in terms of the sheer brutality, showing everything, good lighting. It's like, holy crap. So that kill's insane. Eventually we move on towards the next kills. The next kill with the Ranger is equally bad. It's more drawn out. It's darker in these scenes, so we don't really see as much, but they end up at this Ranger station, some of the characters, and they're talking and they're trying to figure things out. The Ranger knows about Johnny. He's had experiences in the past with Johnny. He's killed some of his coworkers in the past, so he knows how to deal with Johnny. He's buried him for good in the past until him being resurrected again. So, of course, our protagonist, being stupid, kind of get this Ranger fucking killed because, of course, the one character doesn't know how to shoot a shotgun and can't keep eyes on Johnny after they shoot him. The Ranger shoots him. And, of course, this character doesn't know how to use a shotgun. So the Ranger tells him, I'll take the shotgun back quick. That's fine. You know, I can take it. If you can't shoot, you can't shoot, whatever. And, of course, as this pass of the shotgun is going on, Johnny grabs a shotgun and he kills them all eventually, of course. But the first one we have is the Ranger. He kills the Ranger by basically just grabbing his back. I mean, the sheer strength of this dude, he basically grabs the muscles and the bones and just kind of rips to the point that this dude is fucking paralyzed. He drags him to the nearby shed and he has a logging cutting tool for timber, and he sets up the Ranger to be sliced and diced. He first does the arm and then he works his way to the head. And what's so brutal about these scenes is the fact that we are just watching this machine operate, and it moves slowly. So you have a blade that kind of moves downward at an angle, and there's something to be cut at the bottom. It's your typical logging machine, and it splits the wood in half. So we have the whole buildup. He sets the arm there. He pulls the dial back. He goes forward with it, and this machine slowly just inches forward. And we obviously know what's going to happen as we're watching. So we're thinking to ourselves, oh my God, this is absolutely insane. And really from there, we end up with our remaining characters. And it really, for the most part, is Chris, our main gal, and her boyfriend. The boyfriend still is holding on to hope that he can kill this guy, but he's fucked. I mean, let's be honest. Johnny does not die. We've seen him take a couple shotgun shells to the chest, to the stomach. So this guy is going to resurrect no matter what. You can slow him down with bullets, but until you bury him, you're not going to get this guy out. He's going to keep coming for you no matter what. So eventually, after Chris's boyfriend gets killed, she realizes that there's nothing she can do here. And there's a scene where her boyfriend gets killed and Johnny incessantly is taking his axe of sorts, his hatchet, bludgeoning the head of Chris's boyfriend over and over and over and over and over. He does this for goddamn near 3 to 5 minutes, and Chris is standing there paralyzed watching this. What does she do? She decides, this is fucked. I'm getting the hell out of Dodge. She sets down the locket in hopes that maybe it will settle and hopefully it will put him at peace. We don't know whether it will or not, but we do see Chris get away. She ends up on a road. She's picked up by a woman, a good Samaritan, who takes her into her truck to drive her to the hospital. This is point number 2 that a lot of people disliked. It was number 1, the victims. Number 2, the ending. And the ending, I like the ending a little bit more than the victims. Honestly, I can defend the ending a little bit. The ending is so different. Everything we've seen from horror movies and slashers especially is the victim gets away at the end, maybe gets a ride from somebody. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for example, we just talked about that on episode 24. The character gets away in the truck and for what we know is safe, but we don't know who picked her up, what their intentions are. That's what we get to see here in A Violent Nature. We have literally 10 to 15, probably 10 minutes of the woman and Chris in the truck driving to the hospital, just having open dialogue. Of course, Chris is kind of unresponsive. She just went through the shock of her life. She doesn't know what to think. So the woman the whole time is trying to kind of instigate a conversation, trying to get Chris to talk. And all this while, what I love about it is we actually get to see this conversation. Usually we don't get that in the horror movie. We are always questioning what actually gets talked about when the victim gets picked up. We get to see that here. And the whole time we're wondering, okay, what is her intentions? Is the woman good? Is she bad? What are her intentions for Chris? We don't actually get the answer at the end, but at least we get to see that dialogue. There's a moment where Chris is bleeding too much, and the woman in the truck realizes this, and she decides to take her outside. And then she says, "We need to wrap your foot up. Your foot's looking bad. We need to wrap this up." And Chris is sitting in the passenger seat, looking out at the woods. It's daylight, so she can see everything. And she's in the passenger door. She's looking outward. The door's open. The woman's patching her up. She's looking, and it's just a static shot. And then we're waiting for something to pop out. We're waiting for Johnny to be there. And what I love about the film, what it does so well, is since we're following Johnny from place to place, from victim to victim, we start to feel like he's everywhere. Like he's going to make his trek to you somehow. It might not be right now. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week, but he is making his way to you. And that's why that suspense, I think, is so prevalent in that moment. And I enjoy that. I'm okay with that. And then the ending essentially is that we don't see anything more. We don't know where Johnny went. We don't know much about this woman outside of what we've heard. A lot of people hated it. And understandably so. I can see why you would hate that, but for me, I can defend that. I can defend that. But that's the movie in a nutshell. Great, I think, story about Johnny. I think it's a good legend. I think that's a good person to get resurrected. Very, very mangled looking, definitely disgusting. And then the victims kind of sucked a little bit. I admit that. The pacing I thought was fine. I mean, that's exactly what the movie was about, following a killer. So that's what you're going to get. I think that the idea of the third person point of view is really neat. I enjoy seeing that. The kills are exquisite. They're drawn out. They're brutal. There is a lot of blood. They don't hold back, and I can appreciate that. The ending, like I said, a little bit questionable, but I can defend that. So the movie as a whole, after talking about it, after reading the reviews, after, looking on TikTok, seeing what people are saying, combining all the areas I just previously mentioned, I'm going to 7.3. It's not an 8. It's close to a 7.5, but it's ultimately the beginning, the ending, and the victims that really hold this film back. Everything else is in that 8 to 9 range. The setting, the pacing, the kills. I mean, all of that for me is a 9 almost. It's just the ending, the victims, and the beginning also that just kind of hold it back for me ultimately. But a 7.3 is a very respectable score. I think we're at like 85 on Rotten Tomatoes right now for the critics, and then like 45 for the audience, which is ridiculous to hear and to see. It's always interesting when these types of movies divide viewers as much as they do. It really kind of is something you want to kind of inspect and investigate as to why that is. So it's interesting to look at. But a 7.3, I am happy with that score. I think it was a surprise. I said initially that if it surprised me, it could be top 5, and it did surprise me a lot. So it could be top 3 for me this year. It's probably unlikely. I mean, right now, looking at Late Night with the Devil, I love that one. And then obviously we had, what else did we have? The First Omen. I liked it, but I think I liked it in a Violent Nature better. So it's been a great fucking year though this far, and I'm looking forward to The Watchers, which comes out this Friday. Keep that one in your holster, folks. Looking forward to that. I hope I did this solo pod justice. And I'm just happy to get another episode out to you folks, the viewers. You're why we do this. So thanks as always, guys. This has been Scratching the Surface, and keep watching horror.